Alright, we are back to the universe of Avatar The Last Airbender, which will primarily be about the series called The Last Airbender, The Legend of Korra, and to set it up, a 3-part comic book series titled Avatar The Last Airbender, The Promise. You might be wondering why the series is called The Last Airbender and not Avatar, when Korra is an avatar and is not actually an airbender, not yet. And even if she were, well, she wouldn't be the last of them. This is because of a huge fight between Viacom and 20th Century Fox because of James Cameron's film called Avatar, due to complicated trademark laws that, frankly, I barely understand. So the gist of it is this. Viacom figured having a consistent brand for the franchise is the most important thing. Imagine for a moment if Star Trek was called Star Trek on television, but in film it was called Trekking the Stars, and in print it was called Trek Star, to give an idea of why this could be confusing and thus a concern for wanting crossover business from your customers. And while they likely could hold the name in some places, including television for Avatar, there was just enough problems for them to decide to settle on calling it The Last Airbender. Hence the title of the film, the title for this new series. I still don't know why the comic is the way it is, unless they decided it was important enough to stick with the brand and had firm legal ground for using it there or something. I don't know. I'd ask a lawyer, but I don't feel like drawing another pentagram in my basement. So let's start out with The Promise, which came out over the course of last year. And it picks up right where the series left off, to answer the questions that up until then were only answered in fanfics. And that's not a slight against fanfics. Some of them are very good. I understand there's a really interesting crossover right now called 50 Shades of My Little Pony, but I haven't had a chance to start reading that yet. Ozai's locked up, Zuko's Fire Lord now, the Earth King is back in Ba Sing Se, everything's coming up cabbages. But now is the time to deal with the consequences of this long war. One of the most glaring are the collection of Fire Nation colonies that were established in conquered territory. The Earth King naturally wants to have, his land back, so the colonies are going to have to go. This is what's going to be called the Harmony Restoration Movement, and everyone is quite optimistic at this effort to finally liberate the Earth Kingdom, and there's a grand celebration taking place. But amidst the fireworks, there is one grim face, and shockingly, that's Zuko. I know, Zuko being down, that seems kind of odd, especially when you look at how happy he is on the front cover here. Just look at that expression. That's Zuko on the cusp of total ecstasy. Well, Zuko has a favor to ask of Aang, the promise that the comic title refers to. If Zuko starts acting like his father, he wants Aang to kill him. Ah, Zuko, you always know just how to deploy piss-spewing blimps over everybody's parade. Well, you know what will really put a smile on Zuko's face? 5 attempts on his life over the first year of his reign, so that they have to put him in a secure tower to try to keep him safe, and even then he awakens to find another assassin, who's calling him a traitor to his people. Zuko wins the fight, and the assassin is revealed to be the daughter of the mayor of Yu Dao, one of the Fire Nation colonies. Zuko heads with her to Yu Dao, and the mayor obviously kowtows before him to apologize. But when Zuko insists the movement is about ensuring peace, even the mayor stands up to him, pointing out that this is a colony built by Fire Nation citizens who have dwelled here for generations. Zuko is siding with the Earth Kingdom against his own people by taking away everything they ever worked for. When his father is brought up, Zuko flashes back to that unresolved plot point from Sozin's comment. Zuko storms in and demands to know from his father where his mother is, and Ozai responds by making fun of him and then telling him that handling the pressures of being Fire Lord is going to be impossible without Ozai's help, so Zuko storms off. In the present, he's enraged at the mention of his father, but the next thing we see, he's ordered the end of the Harmony Restoration Movement. The colonials are to remain where they are. Naturally, Team Avatar is going to head to Yu Dao to sort this out, but things are getting bad with Earth Kingdom citizens ready to use force to drive the Fire Nation out, and Fire Nation soldiers are about to enforce Zuko's decree. Plus, Roku's been telling Aang that he should keep the promise and kill Zuko. So when the soldiers start mixing up with Aang, things get out of hand, and next thing you know, Aang's gone and opened up all the chakras so that Katara needs to talk him down before who knows what happens, and the two can finally just discuss this. Zuko points out that the Fire Nation turned this tiny little village into the massive city that it now is, that it was Fire Nation and Earth Kingdom working side by side that did that. In fact, the assassin, Korra, is actually an earthbender, even though she feels that she is a member of the Fire Nation because of her father's heritage. But Aang says harmony requires 4 nations in balance, so with one nation occupying another, there is no harmony. You might have noticed that if you use the first two letters of harmony, then the acronym for the Harmony Restoration Movement is HARM. It has good intentions, but that is where it all started when Sozin decided to share the glory and achievements of the Fire Nation with the rest of the world. Even if it required doing it against their will, he believed it was for their own good. He thought he was helping in a way, but he wound up causing a horrible thing to happen. Now they're so eager to fix all this that they're unwittingly planning to hurt these people. But Aang is the Avatar. 4 nations in harmony is the only way that makes any sense to him. To allow it to be otherwise is wrong to him. And Zuko's still wondering if he's doing the right thing, so the first issue ends with him going to see his father to ask for some advice, which continues in issue 2, bringing up the time young Zuko was on vacation and saw a hawk attacking a turtle crab, and he stepped in and rescued the crab, but now Zuko could see that the hawk was going to starve, and as he stood there wondering what to do, he was swept out to sea. Then he got a tummy ache because that's just the way Zuko's luck runs. Zuko reflects on this story and decides that the lesson is that things went wrong because he was indecisive. He should have sided with the hawk because it had earned its meal by being strong. But Ozai says he's still wrong. He should have sided with whichever he chose because he has the power to make whatever decision he likes. His choosing to aid the strong or defend the weak is what makes that cause right. Zuko's problem is that he thinks there's a morality outside himself that he's answerable to. But as Fire Lord, he is answerable to no one. Not the help that Zuko wants, to say the least. Since as long as we've seen him, he's been shifting all over the place on what the right thing to do is. It's led to this problem. He's been wrong so many times, he's become unsure of himself. But it's not just his own life that's getting screwed up this time. The whole Fire Nation could pay for his failure as a ruler, and that leaves room for self-doubt. But for now, he's going to have to hope that his instincts about Yu Dao are correct, that they deserve to stay and live the lives they've made instead of having to abandon it, all because of people far away from them who don't like where they happen to be living on some map somewhere. Things get worse when Aang and Katara talk to the Earth King. They want to set up a meeting to try to resolve all this, but after much consideration, the Earth King believes he needs to make up for his previous blindness and stand up for his kingdom. So he's sending the army to expel the Fire Nation citizens by force if necessary. Zuko hears about that and sends his own army to protect them, closing out issue 2. In the final part, Aang and Zuko are in a shared dream where neither one is wearing pants. No, I'm kidding. Each is being counseled by the one who had come before him to tell him to do what he doesn't want to do. For Aang to kill Zuko, and for Zuko to accept that morality is whatever the Fire Lord decrees that it is. The two wind up in conflict, which leads to the conflict between Earth and Fire armies, and of course they wake up screaming and probably having peed a little. But they continue to follow their path. But when Aang arrives to warn the Fire Nation colonists to leave Yu Dao, he's attacked by Firebenders and Earthbenders. They've been practicing together to defend their homes from anybody that tries to separate them. Aang is still on the side of the Harmony Restoration movement, and things get worse when the Avatar fan club arrives. There had been one in Ba Sing Se, and Aang just ate it up because really they were just a bunch of fangirls who worshipped him. But these piss him off because these girls have co-opted his culture, learning everything about airbenders and getting the tattoos and such. But they're not actually airbenders, so he treats it like an insult and is even more determined than ever to restore balance, aka kick everyone across the effing ocean. When Katara goes to see him, he says that it's because when two nations come together, one is dominated by the other. The Earth Kingdom girls are making a joke of his culture. The Fire Nation citizens are usually the richer ones in Yu Dao. Harmony exists to avoid this. Of course, that's Aang grasping at straws. There will still be the Airbending Club. Domination of the weak by the strong and the poor by the rich will occur regardless of whether or not the kingdoms are mixed in any way. But as the Avatar, Aang is thinking in terms of his responsibility in the role of maintaining harmony. And yet the Harmony Restoration movement has transformed peace into war. Aang is still clinging to the past, see. It's really no different than in the Northern Air Temple when he showed up and was pissed off about all of the mechanizations that were taking place there. He felt that it was desecrating this old place, saying it was unnatural, and some have used that to argue that that's why Legend of Korra is wrong, because of these unnatural machines, this unnatural technology. But Aang learned a lesson from all of that. He wasn't there for these people in the past. That's why they were here now. That's why this had taken place. And ordering them all out and trying to restore it all wasn't going to be possible anymore. You live in the here and the now. Learn from the past, but don't try to live in the past, especially when you're the Avatar. There is injustice going on all around him. If Aang is going to be the Avatar, he needs to take care of the problems people have now and work on building a better future. And plus, Katara points out that by Aang's own rule, it would mean that they couldn't be together. She's Water Tribe, he's Air Nomad. And my audience is way too young for a Green Acres reference, so what are they supposed to do? Well, too late for that. Smellerbee and Longshot have been rallying protesters that want the Fire Nation out, and after breaching the wall, they've allowed easy entrance from the Earth Kingdom. But they arrive as the Fire Nation army arrives, whose tanks are luckily stopped thanks to Sokka, Toph, and Suki. But General Hao insists that this will lead to war again unless Aang keeps his promise and puts Zuko down. There's violence in Avatar State, but Katara steps in and tells Aang to go find a spot to meditate and try to figure all this out before he makes with the whole killing thing. Of course, Roku's still behind that kill Zuko plan, but Aang returns in the midst of the fight and Earth bends around the whole city, now siding with it against the Harmony Restoration movement. The Earth King calls off the attack. When Aang next speaks to Roku, he says that his words are old counsel for an old world. This new world is different, and they're all going to have to just accept that. Yudao can't remain a Fire Nation colony, that would be an imbalance. But it cannot be returned to the Earth Kingdom either. It must become something new. Aang and Zuko finally address the promise, and we see how it ties in with the issue relating to Ozai. As Zuko puts it, he struggled with what's right and what's wrong, and what he did was basically put that responsibility on Aang's shoulders by making him promise to kill him if he went bad. But to be a Fire Lord, a good Fire Lord, he has to struggle with those hard questions and answer them, as he did with defending his people in Yudao. Take responsibility for the consequences of those actions. To do otherwise makes the consequences fall on Aang, and that means that he would be no leader at all. And Aang must accept that his people are gone, and he can either let the Air Nomads fade into history, or he can bring them into this new world by turning the committed fan club into the Air Acolytes to carry on the traditions and philosophies. But in all aspects, it all comes back to the same point. Clinging to the past is going to continue to lead them to the same conflicts of the past. For the world to endure, for true harmony to take place, it must accept itself and embrace the future. And that future is what we discover in the legend of Korra.